I know I basically just made a Sonic video and have another one on the franchise, but I love the music in the franchise and I thought it was time for me to try to make my own Sonic soundtrack. And today I'm gonna show you how I made it. This track was made with the Sonic Mania soundtrack in mind, and specifically I was listening to the Mirage Saloon Act 2 song. Before I start with the first step, be sure to comment below whether you think I did a good job and if you could hear this in Sonic Mania or not. The first thing I did was get a general idea of the form and number of instruments in this song. This song has 4 different sections and about 7 or so different melodic instruments involved. And so the plan is to follow that and to have 4 sections and at least close to 7 different instruments. The first thing to do is to spend, I don't know how long, but just clicking and trying to find sounds that I like. This is really the longest part of this process, and I ended up finding a synth sound that I like and put down a chord progression reminiscent of some disco or neo soul type of songs. After that, I used a muted trumpet to lay down the melody that comes in after the intro section of the song. It was actually a little hard to make this melody sensible due to the chords being fast and not really diatonic to each other. Usually in normal progressions, you can stay in the same key and just accent different notes with the chords, but the progression I'm using makes me have to move around a lot more, but I didn't feel like changing the progression, so I just stuck with it. I wanted to add some acoustic piano with a bit more rhythm, so at first I just added piano with 8th notes to it, but you will hear later how I changed that part into something else. Here comes my favorite part of finishing the melody, adding in a bass part, which just fills the whole part up. I spent most of the time making sure I had the right bass sound, and I ended up choosing an electric sound from the Moto Bass 2 plugin. The bass line itself didn't take too much time. Bass lines used to be tricky for me, but 2 tips I can give you is if you know how to play a bit of piano, spend some time just learning the bass line parts to songs you like by ear. And also, when you're making a bass line, it sounds really good when you have some large interval leaps when you can, and it makes sense because those large interval leaps just add for more excitement through the phrase. If you can't play it up the tempo like I can't right now, it helps if you also record it under tempo. Now that we have this funky first part done, it's time to add some drums. The tough thing with the drums was that the percussion used in the Mirage Saloon Act 2 track isn't like your normal, drum set. The kick is an electronic house style kick, and they have some shakers replacing a hi-hat and a snap and a wood block for the snare, and some bongos and tom drums for like auxiliary percussion parts. I used a similar setup after another decade of clicking through sounds. I found an electronic kick that isn't necessarily house style, but can work for this song and its purposes. And I used a real snare sample, grabbed some shakers, and extra percussion with some bongos. And this is the general groove that I came up with. For the third section of the song, instead of doing a second melody like how the Mirage Saloon track did it, I just wanted to go for some orchestral stabs as a persona-y, vibey, thingy type of thing. I ended up just laying that part with piano and synth, and I just used the same groove from before. I went back to the intro to add a smoother intro for that bass line and changed the piano groove from before into something more interesting. It kind of gives it a little bit more of a Latin type of rhythmic feel. Then I got started on the 4th part of this song, which in the Mirage Saloon Act 2 song is kind of a solo section that's a bit less groovy and more flowy. So I changed the progression and added the rolls with a basic 2-5-1-6 progression. But the second time, instead of going to the 1, I just played 2-5-6 as a backdoor 2-5. This is the same progression that we saw in Nami's theme from my last video. I like this progression and what I had going on, but I thought overall I lost too much of the groove and momentum with it. So I scrapped that whole section and came up with something else after I finished recording. So if you want to hear that fourth section with the solo included, you can go ahead and listen to the finished track right now. Make sure to let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Personally, I think this is one of my favorite video game inspired tracks I've made. I just feel like it maybe doesn't fit the Mirage Saloon level all that well, despite me taking influence from the track. I probably should spend more time looking at the level and making decisions based on the level like a real video game composer. I also still don't like that fourth section all that much, but I prefer that changed version over the one I had at first. Overall, I think the song sounds more Persona than it does Sonic. Let me know if you want more videos like this, and thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more of my content.